One for All is more than just a power boost. The previous users of One for All have passed down more than stockpiled power to Deku. They have given him the ability to rewrite fate itself. The battle against Overhaul confirms it. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Let's take a closer look at One for All as a quirk so we can get a better idea of how it functions. A long time ago, the monstrous villain All for One ruled over Japan from the shadows, using his ability to give and take quirks to amass power. His younger brother opposed this corruption, but because he was quirkless, there was nothing he could do. Tired of his younger brother's insolence, All for One forced a power stockpiling quirk onto him, as if to say, I am in charge, and I will give and take quirks as I please. Unbeknownst to both of them, the younger brother actually did have a latent quirk, the ability to pass on his quirk to others. This quirk, combined with a power stockpiling quirk, created One for All. The strength of One for All was passed down through the generations, with each user getting more power than their predecessor. By the time the quirk reached its 8th user, Toshinori Yagi, One for All had grown powerful enough to challenge the evil from which it was born. All for One. The battle between All Might and All for One was brutal, leaving both combatants scarred and disfigured. Eventually, One for All was passed onto its 9th and current user, Izuku Midoriya. But something strange began to happen. As this immense power was passed down over and over again through the decades, it grew in its ability to shape the physical world, but it also began to shape the supernatural world as well. What exactly does this mean? Well, put simply, the users of One for All have gotten so powerful that they have gained the ability to change events that are fated to happen, only as a consequence of the desire burning inside of them. It's the reason All Might never loses a single fight in the series, even in situations where he most certainly should have. Having a large chunk of his torso carved out by All for One should have ended his life, and yet he continued his work as the strongest hero in the world for several years afterward. Battling the shock-absorbing Nomu to protect the UA students, All Might had to surpass his own limits, punching with more than 100% of his own strength more than 300 times. That doesn't even make any sense, and yet he did it. And finally, in the climactic rematch against All for One, All Might managed to pull out a win, somehow, only using the embers of his strength, mind you. This is the same enemy that nearly murdered All Might last time. All Might exits this fight with less injuries than their last encounter, despite being several years older with significantly less power at his disposal. And this isn't even considering that All for One is an immortal who doesn't age, and he's had years to acquire more and more quirks to beat down All Might. By every account, All Might absolutely should have died in this battle. Yet, the United States of Smash crushed All for One into the dirt, all because of Toshinori's desire to train Midoriya. His will changed what was absolutely fated to happen. Sir Night-Eye saw that fate. He warned All Might that he would die gruesomely in battle. Now, unless that's something that will happen to a depowered All Might at some point later in the series, then he did it. He changed his own fate, because One for All allowed him to do so. This ability is why All Might has lived for so long, and it's also why Deku was able to break free from Shinso's mind control during the sports festival. Right? There really hasn't been an explanation of that miracle other than the idea that it was just the will of the predecessors. The will of the previous owners of One for All. But why would the predecessors care about a sports tournament? This isn't exactly a life or death battle. I think Deku was fated to lose that battle, and because of his inexhaustible will to win the fight, he tapped into an unknown ability of One for All, the ability to shape fate. It was an ability he would use several times over the next few months. First, in his battle with Muscular, pinned to the ground by an enemy who was increasingly amping his own strength, pushing with a broken arm. Even at 100%, it isn't enough. Deku is about to give in when a burst of energy surges through him, raising his body up from the dirt, and he decimates Muscular with an unprecedented 1,000,000% smash. Horikoshi later clarified this wasn't actually 1,000,000%, but instead just a moniker Deku created on the spot to represent giving it his all. When Deku is getting fixed up, the doctor assumes this was a sort of natural response, a rush of adrenaline letting Deku surpass his limits for a short moment. But I don't think so. If this were Deku's teenage body letting out all of its strength, then that would be a negligible difference in power compared to the strength of One for All. I think this was another instance of Deku and the predecessor's will shaping fate in order to save Koda. But this has all just been speculation. Finally, we can be done with our theorizing. An actual proven instance of Deku changing his fate, the fight with Overhaul. Sir Night-Eye has been trying to find a way to change fate his entire life, all in a bid to prevent All Might from the gruesome end he foresaw. And in all these years of searching, Night-Eye has never found a way to alter the future he's foreseen, until he meets Deku. In the climactic fight against Overhaul, Deku adopts the rewinding power of Eri to continuously use 100% of One for All throughout the entire fight, launching the monstrosity into the sky and slamming it back down with the force of 9 generations of strength. Chisaki is knocked unconscious and arrested, a direct contrast with the scenario where Midoriya ends up dead in his wake. Night-Eye's prediction was proven wrong. But how? Well, he gives us his best theory on his deathbed. It's about energy. The energy and will of everyone fighting to save Eri that day. The collection of that energy managed to cause a distortion in the future, reworking it into a better one. Assuming Night-Eye is right, then we now have an explanation for One for All. It's a quirk that lets you change fate because it meets the 2 requirements outlined by Night-Eye. First, it's about energy. One for All is without a doubt the most powerful energy source on the planet, so of course it meets this requirement. Secondly, the strong collective will of a group wishing to change the future. This is why All Might beat All for One. The 2 of them might have equal strength, but All for One is a single person, a lone monster who serves himself. All Might carries One for All with him. In other words, he carries the will of 7 other hearts, burning with a desire to change the future. One for All stockpiles power, yes, but it also stockpiles willpower. And now, Deku has access to all of that willpower. He holds inside him the ability to change fate even when he doesn't know it. Normally with anime, I don't watch the movies because they exist as non-canon filler, and I like to receive stories the way the author originally intended. But with My Hero, the 2 movies have actually been supervised by Horikoshi, and he loves them and their content. He feels the same way about the Vigilante spin-off manga, by the way. Anyway, for this reason, I consider the My Hero movies canon. So the last point I want to make is from the Heroes Rising movie. During the climax, Deku shares One for All with Bakugo, and the 2 of them team up to defeat the villain. After an insane battle, they lay on the ground exhausted, and Deku sadly tells All Might how sorry he is. He had to sacrifice One for All, and that Bakugo is the new wielder now. And yet, fate is changed right before All Might's eyes, as the power of One for All returns to Deku. Somehow. The only explanation given is that the predecessors willed it. I can't think of a more obvious indication that the willpower of One for All allows its users to change fate. I like to think that it was Deku's fate to be forever quirkless, but the future was altered when he met All Might. Their introduction was always quite weird to me, and very coincidental. It just so happens that Midoriya meets the one person who could help him be a hero right in time for his entrance into UA, and it just so happens that All Might finds the successor the very year that All for One resurfaces. No, I don't think it was coincidental. I think All Might willed it to happen that he would find a worthy successor, and because he possessed One for All, it became true. This scene, the image of Deku kneeling before All Might, it's framed in such a way that the sun is shining directly behind All Might's back. Now, the obvious symbolism is that he is the light that will lead Deku out of this dark situation. And of course, another interpretation is that All Might is the light that shines upon the world, a representation of his status of hope as the #1 hero. But I have a different interpretation. I think that this light represents the will of All Might's predecessors. It's behind All Might because that is what is pushing him forward toward the one thing he wants most in that moment, a worthy heir to his power. Deku now carries inside of him the will of all 8 predecessors of One for All, and so he possesses the power to change fate. Unfortunately, there's someone else out there who carries the will of many inside of him, stockpiling power. Soon, One for All might not be the only singularity. The power to shape the future might just fall into the hands of someone who plans to tear everything down. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hero Aka is one of my favorite anime and manga at the moment, so let me know if you'd like to see more videos on it in the future. In the meantime, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, ring that bell, and consider supporting me on Patreon. Plus Ultra, and stay frosty.